Hi everyone, welcome to the Conversationalist TM, where we're all about having good, meaningful conversations. My name is Tani Gambata, and I want to welcome you to the conversation room. So today's topic is quite light, I think. It's something that I've been pondering upon for the past couple of days. Something actually happened that triggered it. So when that was happening, I was like, this is quite an interesting observation. So I thought, let me bring it here. Let's come and have a conversation about it. Let me hear what you guys have to think about it. And in essence, it's actually a broad topic, okay? Today's topic is about the rise of women in a changing world. And that is a very broad topic with different aspects to it. And it will be impossible to even try and unpack that in one sitting. So I just want to focus on two aspects today, which I think, because of the day-to-day lived experiences that we have, it affects that. One, it stems from that. Two, and it just has an impact on how we as society generally are reacting to this rise of women in a changing world. And the kind of woman I want to talk about is a specific kind of woman. She's a different caliber of woman. She is goal orientated. She is driven. She is purpose driven. She's focused. She's on a journey of narrating her own story. She's on a journey on writing out her own life story without the dictates of society around her, without the dictates and the pressures of the community, whether that she comes from or she finds herself in. But she is making a decision where she is to say, I have a different view of what my life looks like, and it's not the typical view that we have been told. I don't know about you, but growing up, there were a lot of voices who kind of like wanted to dictate how my life or a life for a young girl, or how life for a young girl needs to plan out, right? For instance, go to school, get educated, get a job, then you get married, then you have kids, then you're building a home, right? And that's basically how a woman's life is generally, according to societal perceptions and cultural perceptions, is meant to turn out, right? Where at the end of the day, your sole focus becomes ugakumuzi, right? And that comes in different forms and in different ways. But today we want to talk about a woman. I want to talk about a woman who is like, you know what, that's not necessarily the journey that I'm on, okay? I am not necessarily on a path where I am prioritizing this getting married, getting kids, building a home thing. I have different priorities in life. I have different goals that I want to achieve. I just have a different vision for my life altogether. And I want to be able to live that out without the unnecessary pressure that is trying to force me into a particular path when I am taking a choice and wanting to choose a different path for myself. And I feel that as society, we need to get to a place where we learn to exist, we learn to embrace, we learn to coexist with women who are making different choices for themselves, are making, they're narrating their own life story and then not allowing themselves to fall into what would be a typical way of life by force, okay? There's nothing wrong when you choose a life where you have a career, you have a family, you're building a home, like that is just what you desire. There's also nothing equally wrong when you are like, you know what, I'm focused on having a career, doing other things, being a philanthropist, being all these other things, and family and building a home is just not part of that. And there's nothing wrong with that, because I've seen quite a lot in the spaces I've been in where you have, your married woman who would be like questioning the choices and decisions of the unmarried, and almost like there's this weighing up of, because you are married, you have kids, you have all of these family responsibilities, you're more of a woman as compared to someone who doesn't have that and who chooses not to have that, and therefore there's this unnecessary weighing up of, who's more of a woman. My womanhood is now determined by things that have nothing to do with me, how do we then as society come to a place of saying, you know what, it's okay, you're making different choices for yourself and that is okay, you're making you're paving out a different life for yourself and that is okay, we are not going to judge you based on that. We're not going to pressure you into something that you're not or you don't want to be. And therefore, we will love you, we will embrace you just as you are, and we will learn to actually coexist with you and the type of person that you are, just as you are, without weighing up against anyone, without weighing up against our own perceptions. Because we tend to do that as society, right? We have these underlying biases, we have these perceptions that we have of what women and men should be. And the moment something or someone chooses differently to that, it's almost like, what are you doing? You know, there's like a shock that comes with it, and sometimes it's a resistance to say, but what do you mean at this age? Awufuna indoda, awunabantwana. Isikhathi siyahamba, babes. But you're just like, no, my time is moving quite okay, thank you very much, and based on my to-do list, you're doing quite well. And it's not always accepted, you know. Choices like that are not always accepted. People like that are not always embraced. Women who make those choices are not always embraced. So that's what today's topic is about. I want us to actually come to a point where we're like, you know what, we need to learn, I call it the general principles, you know, of human engagement, where you need to learn to engage with the person from who they are and not what they are, right? Not look at Otanegile and say, because she is a woman, your first thoughts of her are based off that premise, rather than saying, okay, here's a human being in her wholeness. Let me get to know her. And then from there, I learn how to engage her. I learn then what to expect from her, because this is who she is. Rather than saying, because of my own perceptions, because of my own expectations of what she should and shouldn't be doing, I am then going to engage with her from that standpoint, because that is where we tend to miss one another, right? As people in general, that is where we tend to miss one another. It's like you're judging a book by its cover just because you can or you want to, instead of saying, let me at least read the back of the book to hear what the book is about, and then be like, oh, and instead of skipping to chapter 5, read the introduction, get to know the person, and then from there you know what to expect. And I think that will allow for us as human beings generally to engage better with one another, because we are living in a world where we're different. Okay, and you are going to meet people who are different from you, who have a different belief system, who have different ideologies from you, who have different gender role ideologies from you. And we can't constantly be clashing on those things. We need to come to a point where we are able to coexist with each other's differences, right? And it takes a whole process of learning new things and unlearning unnecessary things and meeting each other halfway. And sometimes, you know, you need to step over the halfway mark. Sometimes you need to meet the person at a 60% mark, so that you can get a better understanding of where they are and where they're coming from. And same goes with this, what I deem modern day woman, where you are able to say, you know what, I may have my own perceptions of what a woman is expected to be and expected to do, but I'm going to put that aside and I'm going to give Otanegile a chance to be herself. And then I'm going to then take it from there and engage with her from that level. And I think that's just a general societal mindset that we need to have. And I think that's something that we need to talk about more, whether it's in our families, it's in our religious, you know, institutions, where it's in our communities in general, where we're like, you know what, there's no need to pressure people into becoming something that they don't want to become. And then you then feel disappointed because you didn't want to listen in the first place. I don't know about you guys. I don't know how many of us go into family gatherings or we go to, you know, certain setups and you're constantly asked about childbearing and marriage, and you're just like, whoever said I was interested in that? You know, can you at least learn whether or not I want to have a kid, whether or not I want to get married, whether or not I actually want to be a career woman or a stay-at-home mom, right? And then from there, you can then start asking me questions, rather than having this imposed view of what I'm supposed to do, and then putting this passive pressure on me to be something that, you know, So I think we need to fix that. I think as society we need to really work on those little things, and then that carries out into the workplace as well. Because I've noticed quite a few times that people have internal conflicts with embracing a different type of woman than what they are used to, and this is not even specific to men. You find women who come from specific backgrounds or different backgrounds, or women from older generations who are finding it very hard sometimes to embrace a generation of women who are like, I have different goals, I have different ideas for myself and for the life that I want to lead. And therefore, how do we then learn to embrace those, those type of differences and to live with those type of differences? Case in point, right? When you enter a workspace, I think I'm going to use males as an example. When you enter a workspace, you may have a different way in which you engage with women in your personal space. You have a different view of women that comes from your personal space and how the women in your personal life have allowed you to engage with them. You cannot then step into a different space altogether and expect to continue to have that view, because one, you are encountering different personalities, two, you are encountering different women, and three, they're just not going to accept everything that you are coming with. Just as much as a person in general, you need to enter spaces with an open mind, knowing that you're going to meet different people. You're going to meet different types of people, and therefore you need to open yourself up to receiving that. So circling back to, the rise of women in a changing world, and more specifically in the workplace, we need to then let go of our personal perceptions that we tend to project onto others, and also this judgment of women who choose differently for themselves, and allow ourselves to meet them at a point of who they say they are and what they say they are, instead of us trying to limit them because of what we deem to be what they're supposed to be and who they're supposed to be, right? I have this example from some time ago. I had an acquaintance who, very arrogantly, very stubbornly was always like, oh no, I could never work under the leadership of a woman. It's not for her place to even be in that space. Why is she not at home with her kids and her husband, etc.? It was a whole thing. And it was almost as if the universe was like, oh, okay, what's in it? And some years after that, he then found himself working directly under the leadership and the guidance of a woman. And he struggled so much because he had a personal view of what women should be, right? And when he then stepped into the workplace, instead of letting go of that and allowing himself to learn and unlearn, he then had this conflict, this internal conflict of how am I supposed to submit under a woman? A woman is supposed to submit under me. And I was just like, but sir, you got it all wrong, number one. Number two, you need to recognize that you are in a working environment, you're in a professional space, and therefore when you engage with women in a personal in that kind of space, it needs to be from a different footing, okay? And also two, you need to recognize the kind of woman that you're dealing with. This is a woman who has chosen to narrate her own life, who has chosen to narrate how her story is gonna go, rather than going with the norm and going with what should be and what is expected of her to be, right? And therefore she made different choices for herself. She chose that, you know what, I'm gonna be career focused, and everything else will come secondary to that. And therefore how she then deals and handles with other people is different from what you would expect a woman to be. So she's not trying to rush home to go cook for her husband or to go take care of her kids. She's like, I'm here. And I'm here, I'm expecting you to be here too. And therefore, because of his internal, conflict, he was unable to relate with her from who she was and what she was. And unfortunately, that led to him obviously having different performance issues at work, and then that changed a lot of things. But then it just shows how important it is for us to step out of ourselves and meet people where they are and allow that to be the benchmark for us engaging with them, rather than forcing our own perceptions about them and our own expectations of them on them that will then in turn actually not only limit us in our growth, but also limit us in the experiences we have with people in different spaces, and limit us in the experiences that we have with women who are different from the norm, who are different from what we're used to. Because you can learn a lot from that. You can learn a lot from actually having a different view of what you are usually used to, right? And I just really find it so intriguing. I really find it so interesting when I see the level of discomfort that men have when you tell them a different story of the woman that you are. And it's just something that can't get their head around sometimes. And there's some men who appreciate it and they're like, oh, actually great. I'm moving along with this, And the others who are like, but then why? Shut up, why are you making these unknown, these unconventional choices for yourself? And you're like, no, I'm shutting down. I don't need to compensate for anything. These are just the choices I choose to make as a person, and you need to respect that, right? And you need to then stop putting pressure for me to actually live up to a certain standard that doesn't even exist for you as a man, whereby you can make your own choices and you can do whatever you want. But because I'm a woman and I want to make similar choices to what you are making, I'm then judged and expected to then compensate for the choices that I'm making, right? And I feel like that's a very unfair stance that people tend to take. And I feel like we need to do better. We need to do more as a society. We need to do better as a people, to actually embrace and to allow women to become and to be who and what they want to be, and allow them to make the choices that they make from a societal perspective, and allow ourselves to be able to engage with them from the different spaces that we find ourselves with, without prejudging them or even boxing them, or putting tags on them or calling them names. I once shared a view like this, and I was told, oh, this thing of feminism, etc., etc. And my one question to the person was, when have I ever said to you that I'm a feminist? When have I ever stood with you and had a conversation and said, oh, by the way, I'm a feminist? So just because I am saying something, you are then automatically classifying me into something else, because you can't comprehend the fact that as an individual, I am making this decision for myself. And it's not because of any external theory, it's not because of any external idealism. It's just because this is a choice I'm making for myself to say, this is what I want for my life, and this is how I want my life to carry out. And you not being able to comprehend that, you are now projecting on me an idea that I've never shared with you from the beginning. So you choosing to box me into something for your convenience, rather than saying, oh, okay, I need to accept her as she is and what she says. And then from there, we can have a constructive, building conversation about what do you mean and what is this all about. And also this whole thing of you then, so not only do you want to box, so not only do you want to project, but then you now kind of like belittle people who are like, no, then you're not a woman, why are you not doing these other things? And like, but then it goes back to what I was saying, when a wise woman would wait on the choices I choose to make for myself and the choices I choose not to make for myself, because that is not the determining factor. Because if the roles were turned and we had to weigh manhood on certain things, it will not be accepted. It will not be tolerated at all, right? It will be blasphemy. But then people want to make that a culture for women. So the standard for women becomes higher. The playing field is not equal. I mean, it's already not equal generally, because the times we live in, but then now it's becoming more unequal for unnecessary reasons, just because people are refusing to step out of themselves and allow others to do that, to be who and what they are with no limitations, right? And I think that is where actually we'll wrap up this conversation, because there can be so much that can be said. And like I said in the beginning, this is a very broad topic and there's so many layers and so many aspects to it. But today I just wanted to keep it light and just really focus on those areas, and just really challenge people to think differently, and to really treat people who are different from them differently, and to allow women to narrate their own lives, to narrate their own journeys, to pave out the path that they want to go in, without judgment, without without the unnecessary hardships and challenges that we throw away, whether it's from a family perspective, whether it's from a religious perspective, whether it's from a societal perspective. We just need to allow women to become, because we live in a world where they are taking up different spaces, they are taking up different roles, whether in family, at work, they are coming into different spaces as beings generally, and therefore they are sometimes even forced to make certain choices that are, unconventional, but that's what works for them, and we need to allow them to be. We need to allow that process to be, and instead of just trying to box women into this. I don't know who created a box. Okay, whoever created it, come and explain it to me. But now you're trying to box a woman into this, and the moment she lives outside of that, it's blasphemy. And I think that's really not really, that's not healthy for us. That is not society. That's not nation building at all. I think as human beings, if you can just, the general principles of human engagement, allow yourself to know the person for who and what they say they are, and then from there you are able to engage. Don't try and project your views on people, or what they think, or what you think they are, and what you think they should be. Allow them to be who they are and engage them from that point, and you'd be amazed. You'd be amazed at the amazing experiences that you would open yourself up to. Not only will you be learning more, but you'd be experiencing people from a different place. You'd be experiencing people from a different view. And that really just enhances the human experience. It really just enhances how we interact with each other, how we are as a people, It goes back to your interpersonal skills, how you as a person develop and grow and are able to move into certain spaces with wiser, being wiser, with better lenses, with less blinkers, because I think blinkers have layers nowadays. And it's just really a wholesome human experience that you'll be allowing yourself to have, and the other person, because you won't be robbing them of their wholesome human experience. But then, guys, that is all we have time for today. Like I always say, all good things do need to come to an end. Thank you so much for joining in the Conversationalist TM. Let us continue to have this conversation. Let us continue to question ourselves. Question yourself. What are your underlying biases that you have? What are your personal perceptions that you want to project onto others? What are your limitations that you have of people that you are trying to project onto others? And how can you do better to remove those limitations? How can you do better to overcome those biases? And how can you do better to allow women to become who and what they want to be without the unnecessary pressures that they're already facing, without adding on to the unnecessary pressures that they already have by wanting to put on your own pressures? And I think another important aspect of this is the relationship, the religious, and the cultural aspect, which I think they have, they need different time individually on their own. And I would love to also go into that. And one of the conversations that we'll be having is definitely on the relationship aspect. I have this concept called the lion and the lamb, and it blows my mind every time I think about it. But that's a little teaser. That's a little teaser. One of these days we will talk about the concept of the lion and the lamb in a relationship context when we're dealing with the rise of women in a changing world. But again, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for joining me. I really hope that you would have these conversations. I cannot emphasize enough the importance of learning new things and allowing yourself to unlearn the things that you have previously been told or you have previously learned. So don't forget to subscribe. Do comment down in the comment section below. Put on the notification bell so that you don't miss the next comment. And let's just continue having these conversations. For me, Tanegilo Gambata, the Conversationalist TM. It's been great. Have a good one.